Looks like we got company, boys.
Damn. Take cover. We'll work our way up this hill.
Hey, yeah, over here.
Move up to that wagon on your right. I'll cover you. First, take that bastard behind
Wait a candy-picking minute.
What is it, Captain Handy?
It's this film. I think it's...
What is it? What is it? Yeah,
it's... boring.
I knew it.
Something else needs to happen or something.
Let's go.
You know, I've never been a fan of Red Dead Redemption. I've always been a fan of Red Dead Revolver, though. I just don't find Redemption very memorable. Just a Western GTA with a lot of the same problems you'd expect from an average Rockstar game. I've only played Red Dead Redemption once and beat it and never replayed it again. Well, until I started working on this video, that is. I think the replay value really isn't there if you ask me. I think the multiplayer sandbox mode is the only thing worth going back to for this game. But if that's the only still worthwhile thing in Redemption to go back to, then the sequel can and likely will just replace Redemption to me. The story for Redemption is rather boring in my opinion. It's actually kind of funny as Redemption's story echoes Revolver's story towards the end. I'm about to get into spoilers, so please skip to around this timestamp I got on the screen if you're interested in experiencing the story of either game for yourself. Alright, here I go. In Revolver, the main character Red is the son of a man wrongfully killed, and now he wants to avenge his pa's death. This was something I immediately thought of when at the end of Redemption, John Marston was also killed by a man who was in a position of power within the government, and his son Jack avenges his pa's death as well at the end of the story. This, however, doesn't give me the same impact or emotional feel as Revolver did, despite being the more realistic of the two. There's a few reasons why I think that is. One of the major reasons is I find most, if not all, the characters in Redemption rather forgettable. I can only remember John Marston and his son Jack Marston. I honestly can't name any of the other characters besides those two. I remember Mrs. Marston, but not her first name, as well as the Native American guy I'm just going to call John Redcorn, and some scientist guy who did cocaine and called John Redcorn a savage.
I do cocaine.
Oh, and that Mexican leader guy that had sex with those ladies and the government agents that get Marston killed in the end. Other than that, I can't really remember any of the other characters except for the lady that saved Marston's life at the beginning of the game. But that's more because of the fact that I replayed about the first 30 to 45 minutes of the opening recently for this video than actually remembering her. My dad remembers her though. He remembers her as that lady with the voice whose Western accent is so obviously someone from like New York or somewhere northeast trying to sound like they're Western. I'm not saying that Revolver didn't have some problems with the voice acting or anything like that.
Why is the train speeding up? Something must have happened to the engineer!
Nothing comes close to the voice acting from the old Sega games though.
I don't want to die.
My God.
Anyways, in Revolver, however, I can remember a lot of the characters, from 5 other playable characters aside from Red in the campaign: Jack Swift, Ann Stokes, General Diego, Nightwolf, and Buffalo Soldier. They all have their own unique loading screens and effect on Red on his journey through the game. Then there's the antagonist, ranging from completely over the top like Colonel Darren with his literal arm cannon he gets to replace his real arm shut off in the intro.
You didn't know him before like I did. Only a cannon could replace that man's arm.
And Mr. Perry and his gang of circus freaks.
Jack, what an unpleasant surprise.
Terrorizing people, the normal looking main protagonist Governor Griffin and his lackeys who are just plain evil and selfish. Something that Redemption doesn't do. Probably due to trying to be realistic and keeping it as close to the real world as possible. Which I find funny. They want to be realistic since Rockstar didn't want to be historically accurate to how Americans treated Mexicans back then. Since that would probably feel real in an extremely unpleasant way. A very offensive, bigoted way. Anyways, most if not all the characters in Revolver have unique recognizable character designs and play differently from each other. They play differently in a way to help reflect who and what they are from one another, so it doesn't just feel like we're playing or fighting the same person in game. In Revolver, there's the Deadeye we're all familiar with that Redemption uses, where the time slows down and the player scrolls over the enemy and part they want to shoot. Revolver, however, doesn't just have one kind of Deadeye like Redemption, but different kinds depending on the character that's usually fitting the said character. I'll just cover the playable characters in story mode. The main character, Red, has the default Deadeye we're all familiar with. Jack Swift has quick Deadeye, where he instantly locks onto the opponents that are in front of him, unloading all his bullets into them in one quick succession. And Stokes will pull out her special rifle, Faith, and crouch and fire an explosive blast that will send anyone caught in its path flying, stunning them. General Diego will shoot flares, signaling cannons to fire at where the flares are. Nightwolf has flame arrows that can light groups of enemies on fire without them being able to fire their guns back due to the burning animation. And finally, Buffalo Soldier has an explosive death shot he fires from his gun. It's fucking OP as shit. I think you get the point now on how unique each character feels to play and fight in Revolver. And I didn't even bring up how the antagonists play unique from each other in Revolver, or how the playable characters have a different loadout of weapons unique to each of them that helps set them apart. Another major contributing reason why I think Redemption didn't have the same impact to me like Revolver did is because we spent little or no time with Jack Marston. He's just a nice kid of the two Marstons that just trains for 1 year. Like, come on dude, that's lame as fuck. And we, the player, pretty much get vengeance immediately as Jack Marston, who we haven't really had any time with to grow to love as a character. In contrast to that, Red Harlow from Red Dead Revolver is protagonist for 90% of the game, as well as the fact that his quest for vengeance started at the beginning of the game, which isn't achieved till the end of the game, taking an unknown amount of years, as the game never actually tells us how much time has passed, with the scorpion looking scar reminding him of his traumatic past. The in-game graphics can't show this, but it says this in the manual. It's basically the same thing that happens to the Nazi with the medallion in the first Indiana Jones movie, but it's the protagonist and it saved his life in this case. Now that I've mentioned my main pet peeves with how Redemption is narratively told compared to Revolver, I'll be talking about mainly gameplay between the two from this point on. The gameplay for both Redemption and Revolver are pretty drastically different from each other, unsurprisingly due to what kind of game both of them aimed for and wanted to be. Redemption wanted to tell a story through an open world with the ability to be able to make good and bad decisions, though the rewards were obviously better if you played the good guy. While Revolver wanted to primarily focus on the game and be a shooter arcade type game, much like its spiritual godfather, the Gunsmoke video game. This was achieved by creating a very linear story with unique characters to both fight and play as throughout the game. In Revolver, it has a combo system accompany the 90% of shooting you'll be doing throughout the game. The combo system works by successfully shooting the enemies. For every successful shot in the short period of time given, the higher the score or money the player will earn. The part of the enemy shot also affects the score as well. Chest shots net you $2, legs $4, arms $6, and headshots net you the most with $8 for every successful headshot. The number of enemies killed within the string works as the multiplier. For every enemy kill in the string, the multiplier is increased by 1. So for instance, killing 2 enemies both in the same string with just 1 headshot each will multiply the $16 earned by 2, making it $32. It probably becomes most difficult to carry a combo once the player runs out of bullets in the chamber, as the player must reload the gun immediately and hit the next target immediately after the reloading. Not sure if this is even possible when using twin revolvers, but this can be completely negated due to how Deadeye works in the game. In Revolver, for every activation of Deadeye, the playable character instantly reloads the gun used for it, creating the ability to extend combos much more easily and possibly for much longer. You'll want to learn how to use a special Deadeye system for Revolver on the harder difficulties due to how many enemies can come at the player at once, leaving no breathing room. Revolver can spike in difficulty at times if the player doesn't know how to approach the level or the bosses, due to the bosses being unique and normally having to be hits done before taking real damage. There's also the choice of weaponry going into most of the levels in Revolver to make, as the player can only take one type of throwable weapon, a pistol, and a shotgun or rifle in each level. The rifle or shotgun choice is probably the biggest deal, but the player can still grab the enemy's weapons to make do, as well as the fact that the levels are usually completable within 5 to 15 minutes each, so reloading a level with a better gear set shouldn't be too much of a big deal. It will most likely be the levels with different characters and no gear choice that will be the hardest for the player, since there is no real workaround just to figure out how to best play the section in the game with what is handed to the player character in the level of the game. With the replay value and the shortness of the levels, Revolver probably would be a great candidate for speedrunning, as well as just experimenting with different possible weapon loadouts to make the game more difficult, easy, or just different to play from the last play session. Completing a level in Revolver, the player would be rated as good, excellent, or nothing, depending on how well they do throughout the level. This can be determined by 4 factors: if the player has good accuracy, combo string, time, or damage taken. If the player does have 2 of these 4 things, they will get the overall good rating. If they get at least 3 of the 4 things, well, they will get the excellent rating. fascinating. Completing the game with good or excellent, the player will unlock 1 or 2 items respectively, such as characters or stages for versus mode. They can also be bought from NPCs in the game, like weapons or the capacity for Red's Deadeye, if I remember right. At least some of them can be anyways. As for Redemption, I have not 100% completed the game for a variety of reasons, the primary one being no interest to ever replay the game. I have, however, replayed Redemption for about an hour and a half for this review to help me remember how this game is played in single player. One thing I should make note of was towards the end of my recordings of Redemption, I realized I had set the aim stick sensitivity to max. This is important since I was going to originally complain about the sensitivity being too high. I did mess around with the sensitivity and couldn't really find a good middle ground. What's particularly jarring to me is how loose the camera feels when you don't aim compared to aiming. Now that aside, Redemption play is alright. Everything plays pretty much as expected and well enough, I guess, taking the high analog sensitivity into account. I heavily disagree with them not carrying over the combo system from Revolver into Redemption, however, since now it takes away any incentive to take risk and get rewards for being a good player. You can just hide behind cover as long as needed unless a specific mission requires you finish within a certain time, and there's no point in playing any better than that since the player just loots the dead bodies and finishes the mission for the rewards. The looting system I'll give a little credit since, at least when looking for the dead bodies, I remember they actually appear on a radar as some X's, so I can't lose track of them inside a bush. However, I do disagree that they didn't have a quick loot system where all the enemies within a close proximity of each other can all just be looted together. It is less realistic that way, I know, but I think that's just using that it's being realistic as a bad excuse for bad or lazy game design. This isn't the worst thing ever, by the way. I just see one thing that could have been done better, albeit less realistic. Realism should generally take a backseat to the gameplay since it is a video game first, in my opinion. Another system I didn't agree with in Redemption was the decision to make the health system regenerative, which incentivizes hiding behind cover since the player can just hide and regenerate their health. There was an option in Redemption, I remember, to be able to go into the health items menu and select the health item, but it can destroy the rhythm or a flow of the gameplay. Also, a little anecdote, I tried using the medicine during a shootout, but it doesn't instantly heal the player character, which messed me up and got me killed in the process since I needed a moment for the animation to kick in and heal Marston. Edit, according to the Red Dead wiki page, medicine can instantly and completely restores all health, so maybe I just got extremely unlucky when I used it here, I don't know. In comparison to Revolver, they did not use regenerative health, instead opting for canteens and cartons of milk to regain the character's health throughout the game. These items needed to either be touched by the player or can even be shot by the player character to be activated, the latter of which I still think is extremely cool. One thing to note is shooting health items in Revolver would also use up ammo, and I'm pretty sure you don't get as much health off it versus actually picking it up, so it adds an extra layer of strategy there. Now onto the Deadeye mechanics for Redemption. Compared to Revolver, it functions about the same and there's less variations of it in this game. The Deadeye and Revolver would also feel faster if the player was racking up a good combo, which is obviously absent in Redemption due to there being no combo system in it. In single player mode of Redemption, thanks to the Red Dead wiki page once again for informing me of this, since I don't remember and didn't play far enough into the game to find it. The Deadeye has 3 levels of variations of it in single player mode. Level 1 just slows down time for easier shots out of it. Level 2 is like Red's Deadeye and Revolver, a classic Deadeye where scrolling the reticle over an enemy automatically marks the enemy. And level 3 allows the players to manually mark enemies while it's activated and time is obviously slowed down still. And level 3 allows the players to manually mark the enemy while it's activated. 2 other changes they did with Redemption's Deadeye other than just having those 3 variations in single player mode is the player can't mark enemies in Deadeye mode using a sniper rifle type weapon for balancing reasons likely, as well as give the player the ability to instantly refill their Deadeye with items or refill it faster with the assassin's outfit, though I can't remember if that was the only outfit that gave that ability. That's rather gross if that is the case since the assassin's outfit in Redemption is a DLC item and therefore costs money to get. One last thing I'll mention is the showdown or quick draw system in Revolver and Redemption in single player mode. The showdown system is about the same in both Revolver and Redemption, where the player quickly draws the pistol with the right stick and scrolls the reticle over the parts of the opponent that they want to shoot. The reticle changes and becomes more accurate the smaller it gets in both games, however the way the color changes in Revolver is yellow to red while in Redemption it is red to white. There's also the ability to lock in shots in Revolver and start shooting earlier in the mode, unlike Redemption, though Redemption gives the ability to spare opponents by shooting their hands instead. I do think Revolver did do the showdown in single player slightly better due to the cinematics as well as making the player take different approaches to the showdowns. In Revolver, Red would be forced into dueling showdowns against extremely strong or quick opponents as well as multiple opponents, which the player would have to experiment and try to figure out what would be the best approach to deal with them. In some cases it'd be easier to shoot the opponent in the stomach than in the head, or just to shoot them repeatedly in the stomach. The most irritating part would be figuring out the approach to the quick draw duels in Revolver, however I'd say that they're also the most rewarding. Shooting all 3 opponents in the quick quick draw duel has to be one of the most satisfying parts of the game because you really do feel like a quick draw McGraw, but it also feels really lame when you fail to do so. Thankfully, in the scenarios in Revolver where you do have to do quick draw with multiple opponents, it doesn't end in a fail state like in the one-on-one duels in both games. Redemption's quick draw duel really just feels like an extra tagged on feature rather than something actually special. Most of the showdowns are optional and play about the same if I remember right. However, if the player does one of the story or side story showdowns, as few as there are, the player is expected to kill the opponents, and I don't think the game tells you this. So the game ended in a fail state due to my ignorance of wanting to spare the opponent's life in the game for a better ending or a different dialogue that I thought was possible but apparently isn't.
Well, Red, you're good. I'll give you that. But of course you'd have to be to live through what you did. Still, I'm afraid that we're gonna have to end right here and now what we should have ended so many years ago.
Can't always fight nature. You can't fight change. You can't fight nothing. My whole life, all I ever did was fight.
Then give up, Dutch.
But I can't give up. I can't fight my own nature. That's a paradox, John. You see, when I'm gone, others find another part-time.